Hi, it's Monday, the 29th of March, and it is the day before my birthday. And I am in such a reading mood, which is fantastic. I slept last night, the sun is shining, it's gonna be 60 degrees, although windy today, but I just really wanted to do another reading vlog. So in this reading vlog, I don't know how long it's gonna be. I guess it depends on how much I can accomplish reading wise, but I hope to read the entirety of the Diabolic trilogy by S.J. Kincaid. So it includes the first book, which is the Diabolic, which I want a tattoo of this, by the way. So we've got the Diabolic, the Empress, and then the Nemesis, which all these covers are pretty cool. So I have read the Diabolic and the Empress in the past, but I've only ever read them one time each. And then the Nemesis, which is the conclusion of the trilogy, I have not read yet. So I'll be rereading book 1 and 2, and then reading book 3 for the first time. And then at the end of this video, I hope to do kind of a series wrap up and little review. I'm starting this on a beautiful Monday, and hopefully I will get a lot done, but let's start off with the Diabolic, book 1. Gotta say good morning to the babies. Oh, wow. Wow, look at that belly. Good morning, kitties. This is Willow. She likes her tummy rubbed. Yeah, blissed out. And this is Callie. Callie likes her chin rubbed. Oh, yes, you do. I have now realized after I filmed that whole intro clip, you don't know what these books are about. I didn't summarize them for you. So our main character's name is Nemesis, and she is what is called a Diabolic. And Diabolics are genetically engineered human-like beings who look like humans, but they are basically lab created to be superhuman killers and basically like guards for very influential political figures. So this is set in a really distant future where humanity is living in space, and they've gone through a scientific devolution kind of thing. So humans went into space and are exploring the galaxy, and then they decided to basically abandon technology. So they have this basically religious cult where they worship the technology of the past, but they're not allowed to pursue technology and knowledge of tech. So basically all of these systems that these people are living in, they don't know how they work. So if something breaks, they're kind of screwed. So this is really interesting system, and we're following Nemesis, who is a Diabolic who is charged with protecting a young girl who gets called to the capital. So the young girl she's supposed to protect is supposed to go to the capital ship, and it's super dangerous. Hi, Willow. It's super dangerous at the capital, so instead of sending their daughter, the family decides to send Nemesis in her place. So Nemesis is modified physically to look like their daughter, and so Nemesis is trying to blend in with high society at this in the capital ship. And I really enjoyed my time reading this. This is violent, by the way. This is pretty violent for a YA book. It is, I'd say, on par with Sabaa Tahir's An Ember in the Ashes series, and I read just the epilogue or the prologue of this so far on my lunch break, and it starts with a bang. It starts with Nemesis as a child killing a bunch of people, and it's like, okay, that's the tone of this book, I guess. Oh. So, hiccup. I better stop talking, but I just wanted to say the science in this series feels really authentic because the author is actually a scientist and a mathematician. Anyway, I'm gonna get to reading now. Birthday cake time. Because my husband likes to bake. It is a gluten-free lemon drizzle cake. 100 pages in. This is so good. The stakes are so high right away that you feel for these characters so quickly. It's fast-paced. The world-building science is excellent, and it's brutal. It's pretty intense. It's been about 4 or 5 years since I've read this, so I've obviously forgotten a ton of details, but it is coming back to me as I continue to read, and I'm having a great time. Hello. So today is Thursday. It is, like 40 degrees out, so Minnesota spring. And I have now read 200 pages of the Diabolic, and it continues to keep me hooked and invested. The stakes just keep getting raised every reading session that I have with this book. The character dynamics are starting to get fleshed out, and we're starting to see some internal conflicts with Nemesis, and it is just such a fun read. I am having such a good time reading it. I have finally finished the Diabolic, book 1. And I'm not gonna spoil anything, but the ending is quite a wild ride. There's a lot of ups and downs, lots of betrayals. It's very good. I had such a good time. I will say quickly before I collapse into bed I don't think it's queer baiting, but it's heavily hinted at that Sidonia is in love with Nemesis. They don't end up together. There is a heterosexual couple at the forefront of this book. So if that is something you're not interested in, I totally get it. Well, hello. Hi, Willow.
Oh, and Callie?
Interrupting my reading check-in.
Alright, Willow says goodnight.
Taking advantage of feeling good and good weather to do a mini check-in. So last night I was so tired, but to recap, I finished the Diabolic and absolutely loved it. Had a great time, and I am picking up book 2. Willow wants to be outside as well. Yes. I just wanted to be a little bit more high energy to convey how much I actually liked reading the Diabolic. I ended up picking up the audiobook from the library for the last 50%, just because the hardcover was just too much for me. And I had a hard time holding it up, and it was getting really stiff while looking down at the book. So I finished the last bit on audio from the library, and I think I will be continuing the rest of the series on audio, which shouldn't impact my enjoyment of it, but just so you know. Hi. Headache today, but I am now 50% into the Empress, and it's so good. It's so good. It is just as action-packed as book 1. It definitely feels kind of like a young adult fantasy series set in a sci-fi universe. So it's really, really good. I will say that maybe I'm just dumb, but there are some sci-fi concepts, or the actual physics concepts that are discussed in this book. And when I first read it, I remember being like, I don't know if I understand. Um, and now that I'm older and I have come across more physics, like real physics in sci-fi, I know more about some of the concepts discussed in this book, and I won't get into it because it is spoilery. But yeah, I will say if you don't read a lot of sci-fi or you're not familiar with like real life physics, it might be a little confusing at first. I think it does a pretty good job explaining the science behind the things, but it definitely took me a little bit to understand it. So I don't know, maybe I'm just dumb. So yeah, I am having a great time. The romance is still going strong. I love the action. I love the politics. It's fantastic. This is such a good series. I've been cleaning and listening. I just finished The Empress. And it was so good. I can't believe I had to wait like a year and a half, almost 2 years between book 2 and 3. It has such a cliffhanger ending. So if you're interested in reading this series, I highly recommend binging, because I'm going to immediately start book 3, The Nemesis. Isn't that right? I did manage to get 20% into The Nemesis. And now, I will say this without spoiling anything. This book starts at a really, really low point for all of our characters involved. And it seems like all hope is lost. And there's a cat. And we're reeling from the consequences and the climax of the previous book. And it's scary in this series. There's no good way that these characters will come out of this situation unscathed, whether physically or emotionally, and that is still holding true. They are in a dire situation, and all hope is lost, and I don't know how we're gonna get out of it still. And I need Nemesis to be okay. I just want her to be happy, and I don't think she's gonna be happy at the end. And I just, Nemesis. She's so sad. I'm sad, you guys. What? Oh my god. I finished it. And it was so good. It was so good that I am now in a book coma. I don't want to read anything else. I just want to think about that ending and contemplate all my life choices. I was correct in that there were lots of ups and downs, and the characters made some tough choices and have a lot of healing to do post the events of the trilogy. Everyone needs therapy. Everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the end of my reading vlog for the Diabolic trilogy by S.J. Kincaid. So this little wrap-up section, I'm going to talk about each book individually, my reading experience, and do an overall review and rating for this series. So I'm going to try really hard not to repeat what I have already said in the vlog portions of the video. So let us just talk about book 1. So This is a young adult sci-fi series that I loved. I gave each book 5 out of 5 stars, except the last book, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. There are content warnings that I do want to discuss for this series as a whole. First off, murder, genocide, death of a parent. There's also a rape attempt. However, Nemesis puts the rapists into a coma, so that is very satisfying. So the rape attempt is completely thwarted. I just wanted to call out the violence and the attempted rape in this series. So overall, I think this is a really fantastic young adult series, and I had a great time. What I love about this series as a whole is that it balances action and intense world building and sci-fi and, you know, all of that plot stuff with a lot of internal character conflict. Nemesis grows so much as a character, and we see her go from a creature who views herself as a non-human to this, she has just this most beautiful character arc. And so I love to see that balance between plot and character, and I think this series pulls it off really well. I'd say book 1 is heavy on the action, heavy on the political intrigue, but also we start to see Nemesis growing a lot as a character. And there's a lot of twists and turns and a lot of betrayal happening. Without getting into spoilers, the Empress book 2 is tonally very similar to book 1. A ton of action, a ton of politicking, but we start to see some really serious consequences, and a lot of the sci-fi elements really shine brightly in book 2. We're obviously reeling from the events at the end of book 1, but this is also expanding the universe as we know it, as well as diving deeper into Nemesis as a character and really getting to know her and her love interest and them developing both as a couple and as individuals. In general, this is a very romance-heavy series, but I personally think it balances the romance really well with the political and the sci-fi elements, in my opinion. But it is YA, so there is the driving plot of this whole series is the romance, I will say. So just calling that out. Book 2, I also gave 5 stars. I thought this was fantastic, and the ending is very much so a cliffhanger. So if you don't have book 3 on hand, I would highly recommend getting the whole series and just reading it straight through. I had to wait 3 years between book 2 and 3, and oh boy, was that a long wait. So the Empress was also very well done. Now book 3, the Nemesis, obviously, again, I don't want to get into spoilers. I will say this is, in a way, the weakest of the 3. This often happens in young adult trilogies. However, I think the weakness is in how much dialogue is in here, not necessarily the ending. So in a lot of young adult series that I read, I get to the ending of the series and it's kind of lackluster, or it's not satisfying, or even if it is satisfying, it's like, okay, now that I've read this, consumed this story in its entirety, I'm done with it. I don't need to revisit this. However, the ending of this trilogy, in my opinion, is one of the best endings and one of the most satisfying endings of a young adult series that I have ever read. I will compare it to 2 other series. So if you have read either of these 2 series in their entirety, you kind of get the vibe for how this series ends. And that would be the Arc of the Scythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman, which is also a young adult sci-fi dystopian trilogy, and An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Both of those 2 series are very similar in tone and scope, as this series, and the endings of those two series really reflect how this series ends. It's very satisfying, it's bittersweet in some ways. The characters do not come out completely unscathed, but it does have a very satisfying ending overall, in my opinion. The reason I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars instead of a straight 5 stars is, again, there's a lot of explanation in this book. The characters spend a lot of time, in my opinion, talking to each other, which is fine because there's a lot of explaining that needs to be done so that all of the characters are on the same page and so that the reader is on the same page. However, it did drag a little bit in the middle. There is still a lot of action and there is still character growth that happens in the Nemesis. And that's why I really appreciate this series quite a bit, is because we don't just get character growth in book 1 and that's it. We get character growth throughout the entire trilogy. The other thing I want to say is I have already touched on this in the vlog section, but the beginning of this book is very sad and depressing. The characters are reeling from the ends of book 2, the events that happened in book 2, and so that part was really hard for me to read because I was just so sad for Nemesis. I just really wanted her to be happy, and for about 25% of the book she's really down in the dumps. So again, that is tonally a reason it took me a little bit longer to read this book than the first two. So in total, this entire trilogy took me about 2.5 to 3 weeks to complete. I read it in both audio and physical formats, and in total this is about 1,100 pages, almost 1,200 pages to read this entire trilogy. And I really recommend it. If you're a fan of young adult and you like more serious young adult that has darker themes, more violence, I really think that this is a great series. So I want to say thank you for watching this vlog. I had so much fun filming and editing what I have edited thus far, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!